This is Lynn Fraser with the Kiloby Center for Recovery. I'm here today with Dharam Kaur. She's a naturopathic doctor and she runs a program called Beyond Addiction. She works with Gabor Mate, who some of you are already familiar with. And we're going to talk today about the program, how she works with addiction, and her insights into the radical recovery from addiction that is available through her program.
Well, so as Lynn introduced me, I'm Dharam Kaur. I have been practicing as a naturopathic doctor since 1989 in Ontario in Canada. I have been a yogi or practicing Kundalini yoga since about 1976 as a student of Yogi Bhajan, who came to North America in 1968. I have developed this addiction program as a fusion of naturopathic medicine and yoga, integrating also the wisdom of Dr. Gabor Mate into the program since about 2008. And I'm a wife, I'm a mother, and my history is that my mother was an alcoholic. So as a child, I was part of a family system where there was addiction, and probably like many people, I felt it was my role to fix her. Of course, I was unsuccessful, and she died as an alcoholic when I was in my 30s. When I was in my 30s, so that I think I would say my love of my mother and my sensitivity to her suffering and her need, and my general desire to help others because of the helplessness I felt as a child around alcoholism. I would say that's likely what fueled my drive to even be able to put this program together. It wasn't my idea to put this program together. Somebody in my yoga organization asked me, because I had already written several books on women's health, and I have a capacity to synthesize a lot of information and structure programs. It's something I like to do. So I was requested to put together an addiction program that utilized Kundalini yoga. And originally I paused and wasn't quite sure that I wanted to do it, just because I knew how big it would be. I knew, because I'd already written 3 books and it's a lot of work.
Mm-hmm.
But it was that pull of really wanting to make a difference in people's lives and wanting to use my experience to help others, and really also to heal my own pain and that helplessness I felt around my mother, to turn that into something productive for humanity. So I think that's what the calling was, to actually put all this together.
Right. Yeah, it really comes from a deep place.
It comes from a very deep place, and I have been thrilled, over the years. It's almost 10 years now, I guess, that we've been running the Beyond Addiction program. I've been thrilled with the healing and the growth and the integration, and just the satisfaction and fulfillment. It's been remarkable. It's been like outstanding that I've experienced through the people that I've met, who are my partners in running the program in various teams of trainers,
Mm-hmm.
and through working with the people that come through the program. It's so transformative. It's beyond the beyond. It's so worth it.
Yeah,
Very happy.
There's something wonderful about really contributing in that way.
Yeah, and creating a whole consciousness around it. It's not just me; it's a whole body of people are involved with this. That it's meaningful for them. So it's wonderful to create something that's meaningful for so many people, and we all just run with it. Yeah.
Mm. So let's back up a little bit, and how you got involved with meditation and Kundalini yoga through Yoga Bhajan. Can you talk a little bit about what attracted you to that and what those early years are like?
Well, I would say I was raised as a Catholic, and I always felt I had a connection to God, I suppose. Even I remember as a child, I I remember being 4 years old and asking my parents to take me to church. My father went to mass, my mother didn't.
Mm-hmm.
But I have this memory of jumping up and down on the bed and pleading with my father to take me to church, not knowing really much about it.
Right, right.
And I also have a memory as a child of expecting there to be a little room in my house. We had a small bungalow, a 3-bedroom bungalow, but I expected there to be a little room where I could pray and meditate, even though I knew nothing about meditation. But I would walk down the hallway almost like looking for the little room.
Ah,
There. But as a child, so I have that memory of knowing that there was something more that I was supposed to do. And it
right.
wasn't really available in the tradition that I had so much.
Yeah.
So then when I was a teenager, I met somebody who practiced Kundalini yoga. I met him in a youth hostel in Nova Scotia.
Oh, Nova Scotia.
Hitchhiking. We were both hitchhiking.
Yeah.
Youth hostels. And he talked to me about Kundalini yoga, and I thought it sounded intriguing. And when I came back to Ontario months later, he introduced me to meditation. And right off the bat, I had an extremely powerful experience. We sat down and did a 2.5-hour meditation, and I had a God experience that changed me forever.
Mm-hmm.
And as part of that experience, I had the realization that nothing else mattered but this. You know, everything else kind of fell away and seemed unreal in comparison to the depth and the purity of that experience.
Right.
So I was hooked on Kundalini yoga from the start. It's like wherever these directions come from, they got me, you know. They wanted me and they got me.
Mm-hmm.
And that's probably what I needed, or I might not have stayed, you know. So we all get what we need. That's what I needed to have a dramatic, it was almost like a dramatic conversion in a way, but through yoga.
Mm-hmm.
And so I started after that practicing, and at that time Yogi Bhajan said, if you learn something, teach it. So there was no official teacher training. This was in the late 70s.
Mm-hmm.
And I became an avid practitioner and teacher and would practice probably something like 5 hours a day of Kundalini yoga, 3 times a day, 2.5 hours of sadhana in the morning, and then I would do something at noon, and I would do something in the evening. And so I was very engrossed in it, passionate about it. And I was, at the time, I started off going to art school. So I was going to Ontario College of Art in Toronto, and I actually was hired by the school to teach yoga to my friends at lunchtime.
Nice.
And that was fun. But I realized that those early years, the yoga allowed me to discharge primarily anger from my childhood. I didn't realize it till years later that inner anger that I had from my childhood, I had processed a lot of it actually just through the yoga.
Right.
And I compared myself to, I have 2 sisters, and I compared who I was becoming to who they were becoming. There were quite noticeable differences. And I think, I know it was because of the yoga. So I did a lot of processing without realizing that that's what I was doing.
Right. So you got really back into your body, and we're really working with the energy in your body and
Yes.
the emotion run. Yeah.
Yes. And at that time, we all practiced Kundalini yoga. At that time was much more vigorous than it's taught now. I mean, it was almost, it was really intense. It was really intense. We did everything fast and quick breathing. And now it's, most teachers have slowed it down quite a bit. And you can teach it quickly. You can teach it slowly. It still has a very powerful effect. But it was really intense. So it was an intense, looking back, I would say it was an intense time of purification. And I lived in an ashram in Toronto for 20 years.
Oh, wow.
So I have 3 kids. They were all born in the same ashram. And so I lived in community. About 17 people that lived in this house. I learned to put my needs, you know, I learned what it was like to live for others, I suppose, serve, obey, you know, live a dharmic lifestyle, live a disciplined lifestyle. So that was all good. in many ways. In many ways, there was some things about it that were a little bit unusual, but the overall experience was very positive. It taught me discipline. I think discipline and service came out at that time.
Yeah, those are really foundational for the work that you're doing now then.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And I could see also, because we lived in a community and there were many events that we organized annually in that community, I could see the power of community.
Right.
And how all of us were kind of reparented by the community. And that's important. I know, and many of us healed, a lot of our early childhood stuff through living in community, or we brought it up in one another. We projected it on one another, because you learn a lot when you live in a community.
Yes.
Yeah.
And Gabor talks about the disconnection that happens from trauma. And then here you are in this close community really connecting with each other.
Yeah. Yeah, the disconnection that happens in trauma is, number one, the disconnection from the attachment to the parents, and then number two, the disconnection from the self because of what we give up and who we become in order to try to maintain that connection to the parents. Right. So the yoga in particular, for me, gave me that strong connection to my soul, like unparalleled, like huge. And I would say that I was always fairly connected. I was never really an addict myself. And I would say I've been able to maintain this connection with myself. Even as a child, I used to spend time in nature. I used to paint. I wrote poetry. I used those things to maintain that connection. Mm-hmm. But then the yoga just brought it a lot more deep, brought it even deeper.
Right.
Yeah, brought it even deeper.
And then that unity experience you had the first time you meditated.
Yeah. Yeah. So and then I sort of replaced my dysfunctional family with a community. And so that became a safe place, really. Mm-hmm. Safe place. Yeah.
Right.
In which I could blossom.
And during that time you went back to school and got...
Yeah, I was living in that ashram as I was going to art school, and then later as I was going to naturopathic college. I lived in the same house,
okay.
Got married there, had my kids there. Mm-hmm. We all lived and worked and did a normal life, as well as getting up early in the morning and practicing sadhana, doing yoga, meditating as regularly as possible.
Right.
Yeah.
So how did it come about that you got interested in forming this program? You said that you were asked.
Yeah, so I was asked by a friend of mine and a colleague of mine, because there was a need to have, actually in the 70s, Yogi Bhajan had worked with addicts, and a program emerged in the 70s that was called Super Health in the States, that from all accounts was quite successful. And when he came to North America in 1968, of course, what he saw was a lot of drugs and hippies and people that were really just trying to get back to their spirit in the only way they knew, which was through drugs, So he saw this disconnect, and it affected him deeply. And that's one of the reasons that he was so passionate about delivering what he had delivered in terms of giving Kundalini yoga. It was the suffering of those people and the amount of people that were dying of drug overdoses that was part of his drive, to help them with Kundalini yoga. Mm-hmm. So it's interesting. You can see a video of Woodstock, and Woodstock began with somebody teaching Kundalini yoga, and that's how they controlled the crowds at Woodstock. It wasn't Yogi Bhajan, but one of his students, because the musicians were late all the time, and so anytime there was a break, they would have somebody, Tom Law was his name, who taught Kundalini yoga to the people. So that was 1969. Yogi Bhajan came in 1968, and somebody was already teaching Kundalini yoga at Woodstock in 1969. That's amazing.
That is.
So, and they were using drugs and alcohol, obviously, at Woodstock. So everything must have been so crazy, an experience being part of that. But so there was a long history in Kundalini Yoga coming to the West to serve people who were in need of that connection to the spirit and had kind of got sidetracked to fill that need through drugs and alcohol. And so I'm just part of that evolution, you know.
Right.
So we wanted to revive that program to serve humanity now, and somebody asked me if I would help to put it together. So I got involved with that.
So can you talk a little bit about Kundalini Yoga in particular?
Right.
Like, people have a general idea about yoga and how helpful it is in our nervous system and our bodies, and maybe with addiction, a lot of people do it for addiction too. But how does Kundalini Yoga in particular, what are kind of the cornerstones in addition to the asana practices?
When we start a Kundalini Yoga class, we start with a mantra. The mantra is Om Namo Gurudev Namo, which means I bow to the creative consciousness of the universe constantly unfolding. I bow to the divine teacher inside and out. And that mantra is a link not only to our own higher self and to the creative consciousness of the universe, but it's also a link to a lineage of teachers. So I have no doubt that Kundalini Yoga has this field of compassionate grace guiding it by linking through that mantra to a whole lineage of teachers. So that's one thing. You know, you don't just sit down and do yoga without tuning into something. Right? And so you'll find many different types of yoga, and some systems will have a lineage that they tune into and sort of call on for help, you know, and other systems won't. So that's a big part of it, even though it's kind of an intangible. But after practicing in Kundalini Yoga for over 40 years, it's very tangible. It's very tangible. So I trust that.
I do too. In the Himalayan tradition that I teach in, it's the same. You bring your mantra and ask for help. Yeah. You connect yourself with the
That's right. That's right. So it's a way of connecting to the divine. You know, we can connect to the divine directly, obviously, but we can also call on the helpers. In the First Nations tradition, we'll be calling on the ancestors. So whatever tradition you are, you call on your helpers, you know? So that's one piece. You call on the helpers. Mm-hmm. Kundalini Yoga is considered to be one of the most holistic, I guess you would say, because it incorporates pranayama. It has the physical postures. You have the points to meditate on with your gaze. And we have maybe 40 mantras at different times that we use. As well as we consider the yamas and the niyamas and service. And so there's nothing missing in it. There's a devotional aspect to it. It's the complete system of yoga. And it's considered, I don't want to compare it because I don't have anything to, I've not ever been a hatha practitioner myself. I started with Kundalini Yoga and I've stayed with Kundalini Yoga. Mm-hmm. But I also am a teacher trainer of Kundalini Yoga, and many hatha practitioners come to our teacher training and they say, I've been practicing hatha yoga for 15 years. Now I want to experience my spirit. Right. And I've heard that this can help me do that. Yeah. So it's a practice that gives people the connection to the spirit that they're longing for really quickly. Mm-hmm. The most common expression people have when they come to a Kundalini Yoga class or a few Kundalini Yoga classes or the teacher training, what I hear over and over again is, I feel as though I've come home. I feel as though I've come home. Mm. And for me, what that means is, not only have they come home to a community, but they've come home to themselves. Exactly. They've made the connection to their soul, to their spirit. They've come home. They can be. And there's so many ways that the practice enhances that, with the tuning in, with a focus on breath work. Usually at the beginning of the class, there'll be a pranayama for anywhere from 3 minutes to 11 minutes. We have hundreds of different, we have thousands of different pranayams that could all be used for different purposes, different effects. So a pranayama would be used. So the pranayama then increases the vitality, increases the energy, guides the energy in a particular way, balances the hemispheres of the brain in a particular way, invigorates the vagus nerve so we can relax more, wakes up parts of the body that have been numb or frozen for decades. So you start the class with that, so you have more energy, more vitality. And then the next would be what we call a kriya, which is a series of postures that Yogi Bhajan taught in a very precise order. So he's taught thousands of different kriyas, thousands of different series of postures. Each of those kriyas, which could be a sequence of maybe 4 exercises or sometimes 29 exercises, has a flow to it. So one posture to the next usually is about channeling energy in a very particular way. So you don't break up that kriya. You follow the kriya to have a specific effect at the end of that series of exercises. So we have, I would imagine, more than any other system of yoga, we have numerous applications that can be delved into by these kriyas. So we have Kundalini yoga sets or kriyas for the nervous system. We have Kundalini yoga sets or kriyas for the pituitary gland or the pineal gland or the liver, or releasing anger, or eliminating fear, or balancing the hemispheres of the brain, or dealing with subconscious memories. You name it, we've got it. We've got a few yoga sets for it that Yogi Bhajan specifically gave to achieve that end result. And so there's tremendous variety, and you can be so creative in how you put together a whole class. Which pranayama shall I choose? Which kriya am I going to choose? And then we always finish with, so after the yoga set, which might be anywhere from 40 minutes to 50 minutes usually, then we would finish with about an 11-minute shavasana or relaxation. And then you end with a meditation. Often the meditation is chanting. So then the chanting creates unity in the group. The chanting even activates the vagus nerve more, so you're lying down and you're relaxing, and so you're turning on the parasympathetic nervous system, the body relaxes, the stress releases, the vagus comes online, and then you chant. And that chanting then reorients the mind. Your thinking kind of stops with the chanting. The mantras are all vibrating the source energy of the universe in one way or another. And so you leave connected and whole. And the story has been broken up in that hour and a half of yoga class. The thought patterns, the emotional patterns, and the physical posture have shifted.
Right.
And whatever story the person walked into that class with has been shaken up. And they've come back to themselves because of that process of connecting to the breath, moving the body and shifting the body, so we're not holding the body in the same way we used to, because the story is embedded in the physical body. And then using mantra and singing together as a group to create that sense of wholeness and merger. So it's very complete and very powerful. And the whole point of Kundalini yoga, and all yogas, but I think Kundalini may do a little faster, is to catalyze the energy of the base of the spine, known as the Kundalini, that's kind of dormant, and channel that energy up through the central channel called the Sushumna towards the pineal gland and then the top of the head. And it's that movement of the energy up, which you may or may not feel. It then activates the pineal gland in such a way, and the crown chakra in such a way, that we have that experience of our spirit of coming home. And it's very subtle. It can be a huge experience, like I had the first time I meditated, or it can be just a gentle alignment with oneself over time.
Right.
And the other thing we do in Kundalini yoga is we combine mantra with breath. So we combine movement with breath. So for example, you might have your hands on your shoulders and you inhale, twist left, you exhale, twist right. Inhale left, exhale right. And as you do that movement, you will say in your mind, Sat Nam. So Sat means truth, Nam means identity. That's your true identity. So instead of me thinking I'm no good or I did something wrong, I'm saying over and over again, true identity, true identity, true identity. And so that becomes a habit in your subconscious. That starts to run your subconscious mind. Sat Nam, Sat. You can't argue with Sat Nam.
Right.
It's just true identity, true essence. And that's really all we ever, that is who we are, is the true identity. It's the mind that puts all these other layers on top. So the practice of yoga affirms that true identity over and over and over again until that's who we think we are. That's who we know we are,
Right.
instead of what's happened to us in the past.
So all of the thought layer that just runs rampant.
Demolished.
It's,
and it's reoriented. It's reoriented towards spirit. So the connection is always towards the spirit, and we're harnessing that, we're channeling the mind in a very disciplined way, in a habitual way, a methodical way to relate to the spirit. And the same with the body.
Right. So when someone has addiction and their nervous system is really affected by that, of course, are there special ways that you work with that? Or if someone has a lot of fear coming up when with the Kundalini energy, how does that work specific to addiction?
Well, first of all, most people, for the most part, don't experience fear with Kundalini energy.
Mm-hmm.
In our tradition.
Mm-hmm.
That's not something that happens. Or very rarely, I should say. I should qualify it. Very, very rarely. Most people experience liveliness,
Mm-hmm.
just more energy in the body, more vitality, or a tingling, or something like that. So it's not, in my experience, it's not a scary thing for people. Or they experience more visual clarity, or they experience, so there's nothing to be afraid of, for one.
The sense of that probably is because it's a complete program.
That's right.
The mantra, you have the pranayama, you have
there's protection,
postures, and
the whole system is guided through it. There's guidance and protection, and it's methodical, and you're not doing anything crazy.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And you just do a little bit at a time, and then there's a gentle evolution of the person.
Right.
More into alignment with their true identity, with that sense of, what's my purpose? Why did I come here in this lifetime? That's really all it's about,
Mm-hmm.
And when the soul is activated, so we call the Kundalini the nerve of the soul. When the soul is activated, that's what this is why I came here in this lifetime. And today, this is what I need to do,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So, and then when there's a sense of purpose, then all the energy can be guided towards that sense of purpose instead of towards something without purpose, like drugs or alcohol,
Mm-hmm.
We need purpose. So in the Beyond Addiction program, that's one of the modules, is called I Am Born with a Mission and Magnitude. That's later on. You got to get through a bunch of things before you get there.
Mm-hmm.
But it's like, what's your mission and magnitude? If people don't have a substitute for the addiction, why would they stop? So we need to help them find or discover or explore their gifts, their talents, their strengths, what they love to do, what they're passionate about. That's all tied in with purpose. So that's part of it too.
Mm-hmm.
So we don't focus on the addiction so much as we focus on building strong human beings, and clear them out. We clear what's in the way, and then reorient them through the yoga and through some process work and through inquiry and asking questions, etc., to get that state that they know why they're here, and they feel supported. They feel supported and encouraged.
Right.
That's the other thing. So for me, addiction, dopamine, the word I like to use with dopamine, which is the main neurotransmitter involved with addiction, it's about seeking. It's about seeking, whether I'm seeking food for survival or seeking sex to continue the species, or seeking chocolate to feel good, or seeking marijuana to relax, or seeking alcohol to numb myself from pain. For me, the best word I like for dopamine is seeking.
Mm-hmm.
But the real seeking is spirit. Underlying all seeking is I'm seeking to come home to myself.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And so if we don't point them in that direction, and if they don't know what they're supposed to do with that ultimate seeking, then it's going to divert into an addiction.
Mm-hmm.
So we have to come back to, we have to guide the person not by telling them, you can't do it by telling them, but it actually comes naturally from practicing the yoga.
Right.
Is we come into alignment with ourselves, and the soul always has a purpose. We have a purpose being here,
Mm-hmm.
and it just unfolds through the practice of yoga. Yeah.
I love the way you describe that as coming home to ourselves.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's always there. Gabor talks about that, we call it recovery. What are we recovering? Well, we're recovering the self that's always there. It's just clouded. There are veils and veils and veils of illusion and mistaken beliefs and pain, that we've become attached to and identified with. So we need an experience. You can't unthink all that. You have to create an experience to get to have an experience of the self, which some people get through things like ayahuasca. So you can get that experience through something like ayahuasca or another hallucinogen. But how can it be a durable experience? It can be a durable experience every day through the practice of yoga, meditation, and pranayams.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I'm interested in, is how to make this a durable experience every day with the nervous system on board to be able to handle it. That's the thing. If you with Kundalini yoga, it's all very safe, because you're not going to have a huge experience unless the nervous system can handle it.
Mm-hmm.
Because the whole practice of Kundalini yoga strengthens the nervous system over time, strengthens the glandular system over time, creates more resilience in the sympathetic parasympathetic balance. So you can stretch a little further into your relaxation mode. You can stretch a little further into your sympathetic driver mode, and you can flip from one to the other as needed on a dime. That's what we want.
Mm-hmm.
Time to relax? Okay, I'm going to fall asleep in 5 seconds. I can do that.
Right.
Time to go? Okay, I'm going to wake up, jump out of bed, get in the cold shower, and do what I need to do. I can do that. So Kundalini yoga pushes in a very good way, the extremes of what we want the nervous system to be able to do, because we might say, okay, do this exercise. It is a very vigorous exercise. Do it for 3 minutes and full on for 3 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a sympathetic conditioning, right?
Mm-hmm.
Then right after that, we'll say, okay, now be still and slow down your breathing and notice what you experience in the body. And then the parasympathetic comes online. So you're immediately flipping, right? So you train the nervous system to flip from sympathetic to parasympathetic, but you've stretched it both ways.
Right.
So over time, you can relax deeper and deeper, and over time, you can push more and more. And so that pushing allows you to face any kind of stress in life. That's called resilience,
It is.
And the relaxation allows you to sleep, get a good night's sleep, do more with less,
Really rest.
So, yeah, really rest. So that's the beauty, just the way that yoga set is set up, with push, relax, push, relax, push, relax. And also the breathing exercises. So when you inhale and suspend the breath, you're strengthening the sympathetic nervous system. When you exhale and hold the breath out, you're strengthening the parasympathetic. If you hold the breath a little longer each time, you're conditioning the sympathetic. If you hold the exhale out a little longer each time, you're conditioning the parasympathetic. Now that might freak people out initially, because their emotions come up, what they've repressed comes up, especially where there's trauma.
Yeah.
But if every day you increase by 1 second, then that conditioning happens over time. You start with whatever's safe. And then over time, you increase it. Then they're self-regulating. Then they're able to self-regulate through their own breathing. When we taught the program, when I've taught the program in Vancouver, and at one point we had 70 people in one of those classes, and a lot of them were still using when they started. Now we ask people to be 40 days clean, because it's a really intense program and they can't really handle it unless they're 40 days clean. But we gave them a questionnaire at the end and said, what helped you the most during the program? And what came out was the breathing exercises.
Right.
It was the breathing exercises, which was a surprise to me. But I totally get it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, I think a lot of people are very shocked to realize if they change their breath, their whole state changes.
Everything.
Yeah.
And it only takes a couple minutes.
Yeah, and it's so simple.
Yeah.
Do it anywhere. It's not that fancy. Yeah, it's easy to learn. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm. So what does it look like? Dr. Gabor Mate is part of this. And so what is his role in it? And if someone enrolled in the program, what would that look like? Is it over a period of time? I know some of it's...
Yeah, so it's basically it's a 4-month program. There's 16 modules. Each of the modules has a theme. Each of the modules has a breathing exercise, yoga set, and a meditation associated with it. So we teach it sometimes as a 9-day intensive with a 4-month follow-up. Sometimes it's a one weekend a month for 4 months. Or I teach it also online where we meet twice a week for 16 weeks. Okay, so it can be taught in many different ways, but there has to be, I learned one of the first times we did it in Vancouver, awesome course. Nobody practiced in between, nobody followed up after. It's like any course you go to.
Right.
You know, you do it, you have a wonderful time, you walk away and you don't open the book.
Right.
And it just is all gone. And so I learned early on that we have to create accountability and community. We need to support one another. And so what we do now, no matter what format it is that they repeat the program basically in small groups of maybe between 5 and 8 people with a small group facilitator, and they meet once a week on Zoom for an hour. And they have specific questions they're going to respond to. They're asked to practice. It's all on video, the meditation, the yoga set, the pranayams videotape. They're asked to practice that to the best of their ability for the week, whether it's once through the week or whatever. They can choose. It's up to them to set their goal, you know, for how they're going to practice. And then they have a discussion, and that's like the bonding, you know. They have a discussion about what's going on in your life right now and what have you learned from this, etc. And they share, and the small group facilitator engineers that discussion, you know. So that's where a lot of the healing happens, is after the course in this weekly session where they essentially go through the program again. And so then after 4 months, they have the option then of doing it again at half price or forming or staying with their little peer group and working just with one another. And so now there's people who have done Beyond Addictions continuously for 4 years. And they just unroll one addictive pattern after another until, you know, the little things first, or the big things first, and then the little things. And it becomes a lifelong, it can become basically a way of staying attuned, you know, because each of the modules offers something different that is important for us through our whole lives. It's not just a one-shot thing.
Right. And things just keep opening and opening as resistance is less.
Yeah, it's so beautiful. It's so beautiful. And this was my original intention, is I really, you know, our longing is for connection, not only to ourselves, but to one another. So to create this ongoing spiritual community among people through Kundalini Yoga. And so Gabor came to 3 of the programs that we offered in Vancouver, as well as I had him teach in Ontario and Edmonton. Much of that was videotaped and then edited so that all of that is preserved in the online materials of the program. I hope over 90 videos of Gabor throughout the program, inserted where they belong according to the theme of each module. Right. And many of the, and some of them are didactic material where he's talking about trauma or talking about addiction, but a lot of it is also his one-on-one interactions with people, which is really just really healing for anyone to watch, because when he's talking to someone, it's like he's talking to you. And so you watch that and you go through that, and it's just really, really wonderful. So in each of the modules, there might be, I don't know, sometimes there's 10 videos of Gabor, sometimes there's 5. And then there will be the yoga set, the meditation, the pranayama on video. Right. So after people do the 9 days or whatever, then that's part of the 16-week follow-up, is they watch the Gabor videos each week, right, along with their yoga practice.
Yeah. Well, I was in Toronto in November with his Compassion Inquiry 2-day workshop. And that was the thing that I really connected with as well. I mean, a lot of the material I already knew because I've really studied his work and his books. But his connection with people and how he made it absolutely okay for
Yeah,
anything that was going to come up.
that's right.
People just they just opened because
Absolutely.
it was safe to open.
That's right.
And he's so insightful in terms of
Yeah.
what it is. Some of the questions he asked, like I think one person, he said, what's the thing that you've done in your life that causes you the most shame, and are you willing to share it?
Yeah.
And I remember what she shared, and it was just, and you could see her, she was so much lighter
Yeah.
after she shared that, because here's this group of 400 people, and she's just shared this thing that she completely shames herself for. And then
Yeah.
it lifted. It was really wonderful to
Powerful.
see him do that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So it was watching him do that in the Beyond Addiction program that that I said to him, Gabor, you know, everything you teach is fantastic, but what we need to have you teach now is what you're doing with people one-on-one so other people can learn it.
Right.
And because I'd collected all these videos,
Mm-hmm.
he said to me, I don't know what it is that I do. And I said, I'll tell you what you do.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so I could sort of deconstruct what he was doing by watching the videos and then kind of naming every little step. And so
Mm-hmm.
that's now what we're working with Compassion Choir. And I'm so happy that we've got this far. And
Mm-hmm.
we have these videos now that are the model of here he is, you know.
Right.
And it's a nice historical record too, because I have him in 2012 and we have him in 2018. So that's a 6-year process
Right.
of
Right.
watching Gabor work
Yeah.
and just getting better and better and better. It
Mm-hmm.
was fantastic in 2012, but it's even more concise and
Mm-hmm.
profound now. So
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So, so you don't necessarily just work with people with drugs and alcohol addiction. You mentioned food eating disorders and different things.
right,
How would that
right.
work for somebody?
Well, you know, every addiction comes from the same core issue, really, which is the disconnect from the self, and then coping mechanisms that are used to deal with the initial hurt or pain or anger or sadness or whatever the emotion is.
Mm-hmm.
And so in the Beyond Addiction program, I mean, we explore all of that, you know, step by step. So we ask, you know, one of the questions is, when were you hurt? And and what coping mechanism did you use to deal with that? And what's the underlying need, you know? And so we explore all that. So it doesn't really matter what the addiction is. The process helps to heal it. So there are many people who've come through the program who have had bulimia, for example,
Mm-hmm.
who by the end of the program no longer have bulimia. That's all I can say. At the end of 4 months, they're no longer acting out the bulimia. Are we focusing on the bulimia? No, we're not. Actually, we're just discovering what's going on, allowing them to explore that, giving them the yoga to deal with it, and they overcome it. You know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's the thing about a holistic program.
That's right. That's right. And I
There,
also have integrated into the program naturopathic medicine too. So I should say a little bit about that. So there's a there's a big overview in the program of the various neurotransmitters related to addiction
mm-hmm.
and what they do and the behaviors in life that would also stimulate them. So for example, oxytocin, which is a hormone as well as a neurotransmitter, builds connection and bonds between people. People who are low in oxytocin have a tendency to be actually either autistic or disconnected, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So you can, an addict can take in oxytocin intranasally. So basically they sniff it and their addiction goes down. So then we ask, how can we increase oxytocin? Well, you increase oxytocin when you look in someone's eyes.
Mm-hmm.
You increase oxytocin when you hold hands. You increase oxytocin when you move together, synchronous, you know, in synchrony.
Mm-hmm.
You increase oxytocin when you chant or sing together. So all this we're doing in Kundalini yoga. And we're even doing exercises sometimes where you're gazing into each other's eyes. you increase oxytocin when you do things that are new and different in a group. And Kundalini yoga is all about new and different. We never do the same thing twice.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a bonding agent right there. And then if we looked at, let's say, serotonin or dopamine, I also list the foods that are high in the amino acids that help the body to make that neurotransmitter, and also the vitamins, minerals, additional supplements that can be used to increase that neurotransmitter, because you can go at it nutritionally as well.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And a lot of addicts are hypoglycemic. Their adrenals are shot. The liver doesn't work properly. The pancreas doesn't work properly. So it's going to be so much harder to heal if you don't take care of that. So we take care of that too. We tell them what to eat. We tell them, if you're going to take these 5 supplements, if you can, this will help a lot. Mm-hmm. And we also have a detox component to every one of those modules. So they started in module 1 with getting enough fiber, enough water to start cleaning the colon. Module 2 with taking a probiotic. We know that probiotics can help relieve anxiety and depression. So why not use them? We know that alcoholics go relapse if they have imbalance in their gut flora and increased gut permeability. So let's fix that.
Right.
And then the next one is on the kidney, then the liver, then, so we go through every body part and give them very simple ways to cleanse each week that part of the body, which is part of the healing as well. So it's great.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And the things that are being cleansed are moving through the body because of the yoga.
That's right. Yeah.
Right.
So it also teaches people just to be more respectful, of the body.
Right.
In a not overwhelming way, just one organ at a time, just learn a little bit about it, and here, this is what it needs, so that self-care piece, which is usually very difficult for people caught in addiction. So we do baby steps of self-care. Yeah.
Well, I find it's hard to practice self-care for your body if you're not in your body.
That's right.
If you're disconnected, by definition, you're not in your body.
Yeah. And then the other thing that works is just the group. So I learned early on that you can't really even advise people to do the yoga at home because they'll resist, Yeah. Mm-hmm. But so we just say, okay, you decide how much you want to do each week and do it if you want,
Mm-hmm.
But what happens is somebody comes back and they said, oh my God, this yoga set, this was phenomenal. I'm going to do this every day for 40 days. And then they inspire everybody else, and people see, they can talk about how all the changes they went through.
Right.
Yeah. Other people get motivated.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we also have a recommendation for cold showers. Cold showers turn on the vagus nerve.
Oh.
And somebody will talk about how they stop their cravings for cigarettes or whatever with cold showers, and that inspires somebody else. So that's helpful. Instead of us trying to tell people what to do, is they discover it and then they share their excitement, and then other people follow suit. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I think there's a lot of hopelessness around addiction and around our nervous system and our thoughts. So to have some kind of inspiration, this actually does work. So important.
Yeah.
And if they can see it in a human being, it's just like us.
Yeah.
That really helps. Yeah.
Yeah.
So as you've been doing this program, is there anything that's been kind of surprising, or anything that you can think of as a few things that you've really learned through running the program that you weren't as aware of at the beginning?
Well, the one of the things is just that resistance, resistance and how to deal with resistance. So for one thing, the Beyond Addiction manual is big. It's like 500 pages.
That could be intimidating.
It could be intimidating. And so how to work with that with people. So the feedback I get is, it's my Bible, don't take anything out. That's a lot of feedback. That's the most common feedback. But then other people say at the start, is too intimidating. I can't even open the book, So we get both of those. So it's like how to give people permission that's all. It's how to give people permission to do whatever it is they want to do, and without pushing them.
Right.
But through inspiration.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll never forget, there was a couple that came to one of my early Beyond Addiction programs in Toronto, and she came to support him. He was an alcoholic and a drug user. So, and I forget what her addiction was. Maybe it was cigarettes, I forget. But anyhow, he sat at the back of the class it was 4 weekends, each weekend, participated minimally, I think was drunk or stoned, at least part of the time.
Mm-hmm.
He was sort of out of it. I wouldn't accept him now. Like we've changed our guidelines. They couldn't do it now. But and she participated 100%. And 2 years later, he emailed me and said, "Thank you for that amazing Beyond Addiction program. I'm now clean. I want to take the Kundalini yoga teacher training."
Wow, it's a surprise.
And he said, "What helped me the most was I felt safe, I didn't feel judged, and I felt loved." Because I didn't make him do anything.
Right.
I made it okay for him to stay in the back of the room in whatever state he was.
Yeah.
And I totally appreciated him being there.
So
now he is a Kundalini yoga teacher,
mm-hmm.
and he's got a wonderful new life. That was amazing.
Mm-hmm. Well, and you're not shaming people. There's so much shame.
Zero shame. There's zero shame.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, there's zero shame in the Beyond Addiction program. And that's partly thanks to Gabor and just watching him work.
Mm-hmm.
It's all about, right at the start, we also ask people to come up with a description of their best future self. And we bring that alive throughout the whole program, because that's important too. Mm-hmm. They have to know, they have to have a drive to who they want to become. And some of them don't know that at the start, and that's okay. Mm-hmm. But we make that their companion throughout the course. So instead of going to the past, we go to the future. Instead of going to what they were and whatever shame is there, mm-hmm. we go to, well, who can you become? Oh. Where do you want to orient yourself? And we start in the first weekend, the first mm-hmm. 2 days, with discovering that. And then they introduce that to one another. They introduce themselves to one another as that.
That's brilliant.
It's a great trick. Yeah, we say, imagine you're on a bus, or we've just all arrived on this island and you're meeting each other for the first time, but you are your best future self. This is after they've already described in great detail. We've asked them a bunch of questions about their best future self. They've written it all down. Mm-hmm. And then they have to introduce them. And they're laughing and they're excited, and they're connecting, and it's just a wonderful, wonderful thing. So that's how we start the course. We don't even know necessarily what their addictions were. I know from the questionnaires, but we don't focus on that. We focus on who they are now, what they need now, and who can they be. And we guide them and we encourage them in that direction. Yeah.
That's wonderful.
Yeah. So there's zero shame.
Yeah. Oh, that's so important. Yeah. And you can really see that with Gabor's teaching too.
Yeah.
Yeah, he really is committed to that. Yeah.
Because there's no safety in shame. If you feel judged, you're not going to.
It's worse. Yeah.
No.
Mm-hmm. So what would you say to someone who has an addiction and maybe they're not quite ready to get into the program, but maybe they are? The program sounds wonderful. I mean, I'm feeling inspired to take the program. And I already do a lot of yoga and meditation, but just what you talk about is so amazing with the connection, and it's so grounded in the tradition and the effectiveness of working with the nervous system and all of that. So what would you say to somebody who's working with, it could be a serious addiction, it could be something more like I can't stop eating sugar. What would you say to somebody would be a few good first steps into healing?
Well, what Gabor says, the first thing we also do in the program is we say, you look at what is the addiction doing for you? Mm-hmm. So if not now, the first time you used it, what is it doing for you? Is it giving you energy? Is it calming you down?
Mm-hmm.
Is it being a companion? Is it taking away your loneliness? Is it allowing you to feel more free? You know, so you have to understand first, what is it doing for you?
Right.
So what is the person looking for from it? And so then it's not a bad thing. So then Gabor's next question would be, well, isn't that a normal human want? You know, to have that, to have companionship, to have safety, whatever it is.
Yeah.
So that's how we look at it. So we take the shame away right off the start, and then it would be to understand where that need came from childhood, and to recognize that it's not their fault. You know, it's the circumstances in their childhood have caused this gap. Something didn't get nurtured that needed to be nurtured. So just let's accept that. Something didn't get nurtured that needed to be nurtured when you were a child, and this is the best way you figured out how to cope. So then there's that acknowledgement that something happened to them as a child that should not have happened, or something didn't happen that should have happened. So again, it's not their fault. So that would be the first just mindset, you know, is having a conversation to bring to light all of that. Then I would, you know, there's just so many pieces, right? So self-care piece is important about eating 3 meals a day. So, and balancing your blood sugar, you know, from a physical perspective. But I would immediately try to get them to do some breathing exercises, whether it's long, slow, deep breathing, because it's the safest, easiest thing to do for most people, not for everybody. Or left nostril breathing is one of the favorites, just slow left nostril breathing, because that turns on the parasympathetic nervous system, activates the vagus nerve, slows down the thinking. And like maybe even just do 3 minutes a day of left nostril breathing. So you block your right nostril with your right thumb, close your eyes, look between your eyebrows, pay attention to the breath, and slow the breath down to 3 to 4 breaths per minute. You know, just get there. It might take you 2 weeks to get there, but get there if you can, 3 to 4 breaths per minute. And commit to that. Commit to just that. Do it for 40 days. You know? I would suggest that if they can get to a Kundalini yoga class, like so many people are emailing me all the time saying, you know, I started Kundalini yoga and that got me free of my addiction, you know. So get yourself to a Kundalini yoga class somewhere, anywhere. They're all over the world, and try it out and see if you like it. And if you like it, keep going. And you know, try not to use for 24 hours and go to a Kundalini yoga class, you know, just, and then congratulate yourself. Feel good about it. I did it. Just go for the victories and magnify the victories and really take in the victories and focus on that, and then keep going. And then when the person is ready, you know, if they can, jump into the Beyond Addiction program somewhere. Gabor is going to be teaching it with us in Budapest in Hungary.
Oh, cool.
In October.
Okay.
But otherwise, there's courses in Toronto and coming up, etc. So.
And so the website is beyondaddiction.ca.
That's right. And all the courses are on there that are being taught all over the world. And there's also an online course. I think the next one starts early May, but we do 3 online courses a year because it's 4 months each. So, and we can work with people one-on-one. So if somebody wants to work with someone, and sometimes this is important before a person gets to the program. Let's say they're still using alcohol or drugs and they want to come into a Beyond Addiction program, but we need them to be 40 days clean. So we could match them up with one of the Beyond Addiction coaches and could work with them one-on-one until they're ready. You know, that's also great. So that's I guess a good start. And there's also online videos of Kundalini yoga, and I have a bunch online as well. So you can go on YouTube and check out Kundalini yoga videos and do some practices online. It's another possibility.
It's lovely that that's such a accessible resource now for people.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
especially if you don't have any money or very little money, you can really do a lot just on YouTube. Yeah.
You can do a lot on YouTube as long as there's some sort of motivation, right? As long as there's some spark of maybe I can get better, right? And
Mm-hmm.
sometimes that's where the holding needs to be there
Mm-hmm.
of somebody caring enough,
Right.
caring enough for the
Yeah.
person.
That community. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for the
Thank you,
interview.
Lynn. It's been
Great.
awesome.
Yeah. It's lovely to learn more about the program and, your approach of treating the whole person
Yeah.
and the connection, reconnecting with ourselves and with our soul, our deeper spiritual.
Well, the reality is that's who we are, you see. So when I see a person, that's what I see.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's what we, as the healers of people with addiction, that's what we have to see. I don't see them for their whatever they're using.
Right.
I see them for their soul and who they can be. And so that's what we nurture. It's like nurturing a plant.
Right. Yeah, that was one of the first things that really drew me to. I first started taking meditation actually before yoga.
Yeah.
And it was basic goodness and
Yeah.
the 5 koshas and what's inside is divine. And I'm like, wow, that really resonated with me.
Absolutely. I remember, as a child, I did a little bit of public speaking, and one of my speeches was against capital punishment.
Oh, mm-hmm.
And the basic premise was that there's good in every person,
Mm-hmm.
and I wondered about that over the years, because there's so much evil out there. I mean, it was my basic faith and understanding in people as a child that there's good in everything, But then you see there is so much evil out there. But Gabor has helped me so much, just watching him,
Mm-hmm.
and his non-judgmental, totally non-judgmental acceptance of whoever is in front of him,
Yeah.
And so that's been a wonderful teaching for me to see how he still, I believe anyhow, it's what I get from him, sees the good in that person, and he sees the hurt, he sees the suffering, because he sees what's underneath
all the patterns
the
and
mask. That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
And if we can't see that, it's
that's why people feel safe with him.
Yeah.
Yeah. And with you, obviously, too. Yeah. Well, thank you.
Thank you, Lynn. It's been really nice to get to know you just a little bit.
You too. Go to kilobycenter.com, Radical Recovery Summit, for access to the interviews. You can watch them free online for 48 hours after they air, or you could purchase an all-access pass. kilobycenter.com.